You have been negotiating your worth with people who never had the authority to price it. Every time you rushed to fill an awkward silence, you lowered your value. Every time you explained your intentions before anyone questioned them, you revealed uncertainty. Every time you tried to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you, you handed them the blueprint to control you. This is the mistake of men who crave acceptance more than respect. They believe being heard is the same as being valued. They believe speaking more will make them matter more. But Machiavelli observed something far colder in the courts of Florence. The men who spoke the least were listened to the most. Not because they were louder, not because they were kinder, but because their silence created gravity. The silent move that makes people take you seriously is not about muteness, it is about restraint. It is about standing in the presence of noise without contributing to it. It is about letting others reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. Machiavelli watched princes destroy themselves with careless words. One promise spoken in weakness could start a war. One emotional reaction could embolden enemies. One unnecessary explanation could expose insecurity. So he concluded that the most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest, not the most aggressive, but the one who speaks only when the outcome is already decided. Because words are commitments. Words are clues. Words are vulnerabilities disguised as communication. When you speak too freely, people learn your patterns. They map your fears. They catalogue your desires. And once they understand what moves you, they know how to move you. This is why powerful men ration their words like ammunition. They do not waste them on conversations that do not advance their position. You see, seriousness is not demanded, it is inferred. When you stop reacting instantly, people start watching you more carefully. When you pause before answering, they lean in. When you let silence stretch instead of rushing to fill it, they begin to feel the weight of your presence. Silence creates tension, and tension commands attention. Most men are uncomfortable with silence because silence forces them to confront themselves. They scramble to fill it with jokes, explanations, meaningless chatter, anything to escape the discomfort. But the man who can sit calmly inside silence communicates something without saying a word. He is not seeking approval. He is not afraid of judgment. He is not desperate for connection. He is complete. Machiavelli understood that desperation is visible even when unspoken. The prince who needs loyalty will beg for it. The prince who needs validation will perform for it. But the prince who needs nothing becomes the axis around which others rotate. This is the psychology behind the silent move. When you withdraw unnecessary words, people project significance onto you. They assume you are thinking deeply. They assume you are observing strategically. They assume you know something they do not. Your silence becomes a canvas for their imagination, and imagination always magnifies. In negotiations, the first person to break silence often loses leverage. In confrontations, the first person to react often loses authority. In relationships, the one who speaks less often holds more power, because restraint signals control, and control signals strength. Think about the men who command rooms without raising their voices. They do not compete for attention. They do not interrupt. They do not rush to prove intelligence. They wait. They observe. They choose their moments with surgical precision, and when they finally speak, the room shifts, because everyone knows the words were not wasted. This is not accidental. This is cultivated. The silent move requires killing the impulse to perform. It requires suffocating the need to be liked. It requires abandoning the illusion that explaining yourself will make people respect you. Respect does not come from accessibility. It comes from scarcity. When your words become rare, they become valuable. When your reactions become unpredictable, they become intimidating. When your approval becomes difficult to earn, it becomes desirable. Most men do the opposite. They overshare, they over-explain, they overreact, and then they wonder why no one takes them seriously. They have made themselves common, and common things are not respected, they are used. Machiavelli advised rulers to cultivate an aura of distance, not isolation, but distance. Enough separation that others could never fully grasp their intentions. Enough mystery that allies remained cautious and enemies remained uncertain. Certainty breeds complacency. Uncertainty breeds caution. When people cannot predict you, they treat you carefully. When they cannot read you, they respect boundaries they cannot see. Your silence becomes armor because it gives them nothing to attack. This is why the silent move is so powerful in moments of disrespect. When someone provokes you and you respond emotionally, you confirm their influence over you. You show them the button they just pressed works. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no defense, no explanation, you remove the reward they were seeking. Their attack collapses into emptiness. And emptiness is terrifying to those who depend on reactions. The man who does not react forces others to confront their own behavior without distraction. There is no argument to hide behind, no drama to feed on, no emotional chaos to exploit. Just their words echoing back at them in the void of your indifference. This is how silence becomes dominance. But understand this: silence without internal control is just suppression. True silence is calm, not tension. It is composure, not avoidance. It is the absence of need, not the presence of fear. You are not silent because you do not know what to say. You are silent because saying nothing serves you better. Machiavelli believed that appearing controlled was as important as being controlled. Perception shapes reality. When people perceive you as composed, they treat you as composed. When they perceive you as serious, they take you seriously. Your silence is not just behavior. It is messaging. It tells the world you are not easily provoked. It tells the world your attention must be earned. It tells the world you are operating on a level where trivial conflicts do not register. And, over time, people adjust to that message. They stop testing you. They stop underestimating you. They begin approaching you with caution, with respect, sometimes even with fear, because they sense that beneath the silence is a man who has mastered himself. The loud man dominates the moment. The silent man dominates the memory. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, anyone can defend themselves, but very few can stand still while chaos swirls around them and remain unmoved. That level of restraint is rare, and rarity is the foundation of status. This is the silent move that changes how the world sees you. You stop chasing recognition, and recognition starts chasing you. You stop trying to be taken seriously, and seriousness becomes your default state. You stop performing strength and begin embodying it. And once people feel that shift, they can never go back to seeing you the way they did before. Because the man who has mastered silence has already mastered power. Most men underestimate how quickly respect disappears when they reveal emotional urgency. The moment you rush to correct someone's perception of you, you signal dependence on that perception. The moment you argue to defend your reputation, you confess that your identity is negotiable. And the moment you try to force people to take you seriously, you guarantee that they never will. Machiavelli observed that authority is not maintained by constant assertion, but by controlled absence. The prince, who constantly reminds people of his power, exposes fear that they might forget it. The prince who speaks of his strength reveals anxiety that it may be questioned. But the prince who acts without announcement leaves no room for doubt. The silent move is not only about saying less, it is about removing the need to be acknowledged at all. When you stop seeking recognition, recognition becomes proof rather than necessity. You no longer chase approval because your direction does not depend on applause. This is where seriousness is born, not from intimidation, not from aggression, but from independence. Independence is unsettling to those who rely on social leverage. They cannot manipulate you with praise because you do not crave it. They cannot control you with criticism because you do not fear it. They cannot pressure you with exclusion because you were never seeking inclusion. You become immune to the currency they trade in. And when people realize they cannot buy influence over you, they switch strategies. They begin to respect you, not because they want to, but because they have no other way to engage with you. This is the transformation Machiavelli admired most. The shift from participant to force. A participant reacts to the environment. A force reshapes it. When you enter a room without the need to be liked, the energy changes. Conversations slow. People measure their words. Jokes become cautious. Provocations disappear. No one announces this shift, but everyone feels it. Your silence has created an invisible boundary, and no one wants to be the first to cross it, because crossing it means risking exposure. Silence forces people to reveal themselves first. They talk more to fill the void. They explain themselves without being asked. They offer information they would have concealed if you had been competing for airtime. In their discomfort, they surrender leverage. This is why interrogators use silence more than questions. The mind cannot tolerate open loops. It seeks closure. When you provide no verbal feedback, people manufacture it themselves. They speak to reassure their own anxiety, not realizing they are giving you insight into their fears, motivations, and weaknesses. You do not need to dominate conversations when silence turns them into confessions. Machiavelli taught that understanding people is the foundation of controlling outcomes, and nothing reveals a person faster than unchallenged speech. When you interrupt, you redirect. When you argue, you obscure. But when you remain silent, you allow them to expose the architecture of their thinking. This is intelligence gathering disguised as composure. The silent move also dismantles disrespect in a way aggression never could. When you respond to disrespect with anger, you validate the offender's importance. You treat their opinion as something worth fighting over. But when you respond with calm detachment, you downgrade them instantly. You communicate that their words did not even qualify as a problem. Nothing humiliates a provocateur more than irrelevance. They wanted dominance. You gave them invisibility. And invisibility is unbearable for those who rely on reactions to feel powerful. This is why some people escalate when ignored. They grow louder, more aggressive, more desperate. They are trying to provoke any response that proves they still exist in your world. But if you maintain composure, their escalation becomes self-destruction. Others begin to see the imbalance. They recognize who is controlled and who is unraveling. Your silence becomes contrast. Their chaos becomes evidence. Over time, people associate you with stability and them with volatility. In every hierarchy, social, professional, political stability rises while volatility isolates itself. Leaders are trusted because they appear unmoved by turbulence. Followers panic because they are consumed by it. When you master silence, you signal leadership without declaring it. Machiavelli warned that appearing unpredictable was essential for maintaining authority. Predictable men can be managed. Unpredictable men must be respected. When people cannot anticipate whether you will respond, they default to caution. They choose restraint because they cannot calculate risk. Your silence becomes strategic ambiguity. It forces others to prepare for possibilities rather than exploit certainties. They approach you carefully because they do not know where the boundaries are, and boundaries that are unseen are rarely tested. This is why the silent move is so effective in negotiations of status. You do not need to assert superiority when others sense it. You do not need to compete for dominance when your presence discourages competition. Dominance that must be declared is fragile. Dominance that is assumed is permanent. But understand this clearly. Silence alone does not create power. It reveals the power you already possess. If there is nothing behind your silence, no discipline, no competence, no direction, it becomes emptiness instead of authority. True silence is backed by substance. Machiavelli respected results above all. He knew that perception without achievement eventually collapses. The silent prince had to be capable of decisive action when necessary. Otherwise, silence would be mistaken for weakness rather than restraint. This is why the silent move must be paired with execution. You speak little, but when you act, the impact is undeniable. You promise nothing, but you deliver outcomes. You do not announce intentions, but you reshape reality quietly. People stop measuring your words and start measuring your results. And results are the only language that cannot be ignored. When people realize you are not competing for attention, yet continue advancing, they re-evaluate you. They stop seeing you as another voice in the noise and start seeing you as a fixed point, someone whose trajectory does not depend on approval. This is when seriousness becomes permanent. You are no longer taken seriously because of what you say. You are taken seriously because of what you refuse to say. Your restraint becomes identity. Your composure becomes reputation. Your silence becomes legend. The loud man is remembered for what he claimed. The silent man is remembered for what he did. And in the end, history does not record arguments. It records outcomes. This is the deeper truth behind the silent move that forces the world to recalibrate how it treats you. It is not manipulation. It is not performance. It is alignment with a reality most men are too insecure to accept. The less you need to be seen, the more visible you become. The less you need to be heard, the more people listen. The less you chase respect, the more it follows you. Because seriousness is not granted to those who demand it. It is granted to those who make themselves impossible to ignore, even when they say nothing at all. There comes a moment when silence stops being a tactic and becomes a transformation. You are no longer holding your tongue to control outcomes. You are no longer restraining reactions to appear composed. The impulse to react simply dies because you no longer see most things as worthy of response. This is the final stage Machiavelli understood, but rarely wrote explicitly. True power is not the ability to dominate others, but the ability to remain undisturbed by them. When you reach this state, people feel it immediately. They sense that provoking you will not produce entertainment. They sense that flattering you will not produce access. They sense that manipulating you will not produce advantage. And so they stop trying. Not because they respect your feelings, but because they respect your boundaries. The silent move evolves into silent immunity. You walk through conflict untouched because conflict requires participation. You walk through drama unaffected because drama requires emotional investment. You walk through chaos unchanged because chaos feeds on reaction. Remove the reaction, and the entire system collapses. Most men spend their lives trying to control the world around them. The serious man controls only himself. And in doing so, he indirectly controls how the world interacts with him. Machiavelli saw that the prince who mastered himself became unpredictable to everyone else. His enemies could not bait him. His allies could not pressure him. His critics could not destabilize him. He became a fixed structure in a world of shifting agendas. And people take fixed structures seriously because they cannot be moved. This is why emotional discipline is the backbone of silent authority. Without it, silence becomes fragile. One insult, one betrayal, one moment of humiliation, and the mask cracks. But when discipline is real, silence does not crack because there is nothing to break. You are not holding yourself together. You are solid. At this level, the silent move no longer feels cold. It feels peaceful. You are not ignoring people to punish them. You are ignoring irrelevance to protect clarity. You are not withholding words to create mystery. You are conserving energy for purpose. Purpose is what separates calculated silence from empty detachment. A man without purpose withdraws because he is lost. A man with purpose withdraws because he is focused. From the outside, both look the same. From the inside, they are opposites. Machiavelli respected focused men because they were immune to distraction. They did not waste time on petty rivalries or emotional theatrics. They were too busy building something that would outlast the noise. And this is what ultimately makes people take you seriously, not silence alone, but silence combined with direction. When people see that your quiet is not confusion but concentration, they adjust their perception permanently. They stop viewing you as passive and start viewing you as deliberate. Every word you choose not to say becomes evidence that you are operating with intention. You become someone whose actions matter more than his presence, and presence begins to carry weight. When you speak, people listen because they know you are not speaking to impress them. When you act, people notice because they know you do not act impulsively. When you withdraw, people respect it because they know it is not avoidance, it is selection. Selection is the privilege of power. You choose what deserves attention and what does not. You choose which battles are strategic and which are distractions. You choose who enters your world and who remains outside it. And once people realize they are not automatically included, they start valuing the possibility of access. Scarcity creates seriousness. Machiavelli believed that familiarity breeds contempt because constant exposure reduces perceived value. The prince who is always visible becomes ordinary. The prince who appears selectively becomes significant. Your silence makes your presence an event rather than a constant. By now, you understand that the silent move is not about shutting down communication. It is about elevating it. You remove noise so that meaning can exist. You remove impulse so that intention can guide you. You remove desperation so that dignity can replace it. And dignity is what people ultimately respond to. They may not understand why they take you seriously. They may not be able to articulate what changed. They simply feel that you are not like others. There is weight behind your calm, structure behind your restraint, confidence behind your indifference. You have become the man Machiavelli described without needing a title, a throne, or an army. A man whose control over himself makes him impossible to control. This is the final truth. People take you seriously when they realize they cannot access you casually. Not because you are hostile, not because you are distant, but because you are intentional. Your silence is no longer a move. It is a standard. And once that standard is felt, the world reorganizes around it. Conversations become sharper. Interactions become more respectful. Opportunities become more deliberate. You did not demand this change. You became the reason for it. This is how seriousness is earned without asking for it. This is how authority is built without announcing it. This is how power grows without ever raising its voice. The silent move was never about others. It was about who you become when you no longer need them to understand you. And once you reach that point, being taken seriously is no longer a goal. It is the inevitable consequence of who you are.